Check, check. Check, check. Check, check.
Good morning. I'm going to have to do this. Good morning. I get to play with this. Hello? Can you hear me? Hi. Welcome to the Meadow Brook Garden Club October members meeting. Welcome back, gardeners. You've had a very, very busy summer. Thank you for being here. Welcome to the people who are watching us through YouTube. We'll explain that later. And welcome to our visitors today. Thank you all for coming. We have a short business meeting before we get started with our presentation. Let's start with our drawings. Are we ready? Wait, she's still selling tickets. For those of you who don't know this, the drawing table is one of our fundraisers. And Lisa McAllister is in charge of it with her helper, Kathy Sabansky, and they're pushing tickets. And Marilyn Creeman. And the things on the table for today have been donated by, there's wonderful selections for October. Linda Walling, Kathy Sabansky, Marilyn Creelman, Lisa McAllister, and Kelly Brooks. So thank you for all of your donations. And you all got treats, right? You do know that it's an open table. Feel free to go back and forth anytime you'd like. And our treats today were Kathy Sabansky, Marilyn Creelman, Penny Brown, Connie Yo, Colleen Peters, and Lisa McAllister. And I forgot to say, thank you for the treats. And I forgot to say, I'm Margaret Jalsma, and I'm the president of Meadow Brook Garden Club. So, for the drawing, this is the way it goes. I call a number, I give you to the count of 2. If you don't come get a gift, I go on to the next number. Ticket ending in 2450. Really? I was kidding. 2450. 2513. Does that sound better? Look at your tickets. $2518. Okay, now wait. You're supposed to go, yay, it's me. You do know the earlier you get your name picked. 2442. 2442. You know what we're going to have to do in the future? We're going to have little flashlights pass around so people can read their tickets. 2461. Yay! $2449. 2449. Happy Halloween. How many have we got? 2467. 2467. This is a strange group today. 24. Yes. Two, 460. 2460. 2447. Yay! Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to Lisa, and thank you to all the donations. Next on our agenda, I'd like to ask Sandy Nix to come to the microphone. And Sandy's going to introduce us to what? It's a surprise. Pay attention.
Okay. She said, I'm Sandy Nix. Myself and Dorothy McLaren, which is back there someplace, we run the MOP sale, the Members Only Plant Sale. And we've noticed that the 2025 catalog from Proven Winners is online. So if you want to start thinking about what you might want to order, go out there, look at the book, get some ideas. Unfortunately, we don't know for sure what's going to be available and in what sizes. That will come out later. We've heard rumors that they're supposed to get it out to us in October, so we're keeping our fingers crossed. That's the case, we will be getting an order form to you a whole lot sooner than January. So watch for that. One of the questions that we've heard over and over with ordering is, I don't know what to order. I don't know what to figure out, what to put in my pots or in the ground or whatever. So we're going to try to be around after the meeting next time and also in January to try to help out with any ideas on what you might want to put together. We're going to try to scrounge up some pictures and things. And so if anybody wants some assistance on that, we'll see if we can't help you out a little. I'm not a landscape designer, but I can at least show you what I put in my pots. I tend to order a lot of plants. Part of the reason that I know what I want is this is my garden plan for at home. It's 14 pages. I really don't expect you to put that together, but this basically gives me the list of the plants I need to put in the various spots, and I just add it up, and that's my order. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, let's see if I can do a little better. As I was saying, this is my garden plan. I basically just make the list, and that's what I order for the most part. And since I've eliminated the grass in my yard and stuff, I have a lot of garden. Okay. So again, if anybody wants some help with putting their order together, we'd be happy to do that. The other announcement I have real quick is I also run the Meadow Brook Naturalists. We tend not to do much in the summer. Spring is usually a bad time for us unless we're pulling garlic mustard. Mostly we take out the invasives that are in the woods, any rosebush we see, because many of them are diseased with things that we don't want to get into our ornamentals. So if you want to come out, you don't want to quit gardening for the winter, so you want to come out with us. We still meet on Tuesday mornings. Just get a hold of me. I'm in the membership list, Sandy Nix, N-I-K-S, skin spelled backwards. And just let me know, and I'll put you on my mailing list. Since this isn't really a garden club function, it's a little separate. And we use a lot of little chainsaws and loppers, and we do use some herbicide so things that we cut down don't come back. It's sort of fun. Okay. There's not that much mud. It's mostly snow. Okay. Any questions? Thank you.
And as Sandy said, the MOPS sale is one of our fundraisers, but it's also a great opportunity for home gardeners to pick up some beautiful plants and a wide selection of plants. It is called MOPS Members Only Sale. That doesn't mean you can't help purchase for your family, but it's a great reason to join the club. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We have an election. I apologize to our guests. It'll take us 2 minutes. Normally we hold the election later on after our speaker, but we only have 2 members to be elected to the board. Our first is treasurer, Debbie Vigas. Debbie, are you down here? Stand up, please. Members will recognize Debbie as the captain of the Gatsby Garden and the director or the chairperson of our famous plant sale that's held in the spring. And she is running as treasurer for her second term. She's been treasurer for 2 years, and we get her for 2 more years. If you would please show hands who would, in favor of Deb continuing as treasurer, and anyone who votes no has to take the job. Okay. Our next position is secretary. Currently, our secretary for the last 5 years has been Grace Campbell. Grace, you can stand up. Thank you to Grace. She's done a wonderful job. And replacing her, if with your approval, will be Nancy Collins. Nancy's not with us today. She's in Italy. I don't know why. But she chose Italy over us today. And we are electing Nancy for a 2-year term. Nancy has been a treasurer with the board in the past, and she is the captain of the Rock Garden. So all in favor of Nancy as treasurer for the next 2 years, and all opposed. Secretary. She was treasurer, now secretary. Wait a minute. No, I'm sorry, secretary. Thank you. Just a reminder, members, October 8th is our last day of gardening. You're supposed to go, aw. And October 8th is when this is where it really hurts. We rip out all the things we've been taking care of the entire summer. But the good thing on October 8th is we have the last potluck of the year. Members know that we are known for how good our potlucks are. And we're hoping that this one will be just as delicious as the one in the past, all the ones in the past. So please mark your calendars for October 8th. The newsletter will remind you, my job is to remind you to read the newsletter. The newsletter will remind you, and go to Sign Up Genius so we have an idea of who's donating food for the luncheon. Okay? Wait, just a minute. Handouts. I was trying to read her sign language. Are there any other questions before we get started with our speakers today? Okay, they have to come from the very back of the room. Today we have from Telly's Greenhouse and Garden Center in Troy and Shelby, George Papadellis. Is that right? Is that close enough? And today he's going to discuss ornamental grasses and how to use them in sunny and shady gardens. And I want everybody to keep that in mind, because don't forget, we're still looking to redo orientation and the east end of Woodlands. So we're looking for ideas. So let's welcome our speaker, George.
All right, thank you very much. I'm not used to using mics, but since this is on YouTube, I guess, I have to use this, or can I just yell? Does anybody know? I have to use this? Yes. Okay. I'm really good at yelling, just so you know. So this is going to be sort of like a encyclopedia of grasses that we're going to go through. The clicker. You want to do the clicker? So we're gonna go through them A to Z, and I will interject often and tell you which ones are my favorites, which, by the way, are on the one handout. Those are like 11, I'd say 9 out of 10 people that walk into the garden center will buy one of those 11 grasses, maybe even 10 out of 10. I'm just kidding, but those are by far the most popular grasses that we sell, and I'll tell you why as we go through them. Now, a lot of you see ornamental grasses, a lot of you have used ornamental grasses, and I cannot underemphasize their value in the landscape for several reasons. One, they're very diverse. There's some as short as 4 inches, and there's some as tall as 14 feet. Quite a few of them will tolerate shade, but most of them prefer sun. And by far their most valuable asset is that they provide us with winter interest. So when all of your annuals are done in the fall and all of your perennials are sort of ready to think about sleeping, grasses are still shining and growing a little bit, maybe even still producing flowers and moving in the wind. And that'll last all winter long for most of the grasses that I'm about to show you. And a handful of them, not many, are also evergreen. So they look the same 12 months out of the year. Your typical ornamental grasses emerge in the spring, preferably not through last year's foliage. So that's why we recommend, it's almost required that you prune your not evergreen grasses early in the spring or late winter, like March or April. Cut them back so all that winter interest has been removed. And then you have the new foliage emerging unencumbered by those by the winter leaves and flowers. And they're beautiful in the spring, beautiful in the summer, in the fall. Most of them will create their flowers. There's a few that create them earlier. And then the winter is when they really shine. I would argue that this is, you know how you go into a garden center and maybe 15 years ago there were 10 or 15 kinds of corabells and now there's 50. And it makes it very confusing. And if you might go in 1 week and pick out your favorite, go back 2 weeks later and they're like, oh, we don't have that one anymore. So we're sort of doing customers a disservice by offering so many varieties. So we have to be really, really selective. And I think it's kind of happening with grasses too. There's a lot of breeding all over the country, creating slightly different changes to this grass or that corabells, that heuchera. And so when you go into the garden center, you're like, wait, these aren't the same varieties I saw last year or the year before. So now you have to relearn everything, unfortunately. So it's nice when you can walk into a garden center and speak to an expert, somebody that knows the slight nuances or maybe what's going to be available next year that might be better than what's on the bench right now. And it's also super helpful, not so much on a commercial level, but on a residential level. If you walk through your neighborhood, see a drop-dead gorgeous grass that you can't live without, click a picture and walk into the garden center and say, this is what I want. That makes our lives so much easier. And it doesn't always work because a lot of them, only have subtle differences, but it does make my life a lot easier. And I've got really sharp people in my perennial area, and they can handle 90% of the questions. But when it comes to grasses, they're like, let me get George for you. So I come running and help them out. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start in alphabetical order. This is why we plant ornamental grasses, because nothing else will give us this kind of winter interest unless, of course, it's an evergreen, right? Like a spruce or a pine or a chamaecyparis or something like that, or maybe the twigs of a red twig dogwood or a pretty shrub or whatever, and sedum. And that's about, or maybe a boulder or a bird bath or an arbor or a statue. Those are all the kinds of things that we can rely on the 5 months out of the year when we don't have all the pretty flowers in our landscapes. So in alphabetical order, this is Andropogon or big blue stem. This is one of those groups of grasses. It's a native. Most of these are native. And it's deer resistant. They're all deer resistant except for one. I'll let you know which one that is when we get there. So this is a group of plants where they're doing a lot of breeding and creating a lot of slight variations in what we already have. So you can sort through them all, or you can just go grab this one. Because it is, this is what it, and a lot of these don't look all that pretty in the pot. I would argue that this is one of those grasses. This is what it looks like in the pot. It's dark. In the landscape, it's going to grow to about 5 feet, which you can't really tell up there on the screen. It's typically really stiff and upright. Provides winter interest like a lot of the others. It's native, so a lot of people like that. And I will tell you that, so this is big blue stem, right? A lot of people favor native grasses because you would assume that they're more tolerant of a broader range of soils, right? But Andropogon, big blue stem, and Schizachyrium, or however you want to say it, that's little blue stem that we're going to talk about towards the end, do prefer a sandier soil. So a lot of you might be like, oh, I have clay soil, I better pick a native grass. you're going to have to dig a beautiful hole and create good drainage before you work in an andropogon. So this is a fantastic specimen in the landscape. This time of year, it's a showstopper. And if you have it, people will take a picture of it. It's that gorgeous. It's not a really dense screening kind of a plant. You can see through it. So this is not what you want to use to hide the neighbor's pool. Okay, if you could, and there's a close-up of the stems. And that's, this is obviously, you can kind of tell because there's Rudbeckia blooming in the background. This is like an August picture of this plant. August, September, October, this is a gorgeous ornamental grass. And there are others that are less burgundy black than this one, but why would you do that when you could have this gorgeous black specimen that really stands out compared to some of the other fall grasses? Oh, and there's a good shot of it as a specimen. Arundo donax, we don't actually sell this very often unless somebody asks us for it. This is one of the taller ornamental grasses that you can have. And because as you can see, it'll grow 12 or so feet tall. In a warmer climate, it'll grow even taller. It's only hardy to zone 6. See the very top thing up there? So you would probably use this in a more protected site. It is incredibly architectural, though. And in the next image, you can sort of see how it almost looks tropical or bamboo-like. And the next image, maybe? Yeah, there it is in the landscape, and you can see because it's got really bright variegation, it's sort of glowing in the landscape. So the reason why we're not, even though this is very architectural and very big, the reason why we're not big fans of this grass is, unlike almost all the others that we're going to talk about, this one actually shatters in the wintertime. And you're not going to read that on the tag. So when the other ornamental grasses look really pretty all winter long, this one, on a windy day, when it's super cold, all of a sudden the leaves start blowing onto your lawn or the neighbor's lawn or whatever. So we call that shattering in the wintertime. So in the wintertime, this does not provide you a visual barrier like a lot of the other ornamental grasses would. So that's why it's not quite so popular. Now, next. This, on the other hand, is probably our best-selling ornamental grass. Certainly not a very pretty plant in the pot because the inflorescence, the stem that holds that flower is fragile. So when we try to sell these things, say late summer, by then all the flowers are broken off and it doesn't really look all that great. But if you drive anywhere, especially in a commercial area, these are like in the church parking lot, in front of Kroger, all around the mall, it's everywhere. And its claim to fame is that it's very neat and tidy, like a lot of these grasses, extremely hardy, and it develops its inflorescence, that flower right there, in late May, early June, which is about 3 months earlier than almost any other grass. So it's got pretty flowers in the summer instead of just the fall. Tidy, pretty good for a visual barrier, other than it only grows 4 to 5 feet tall. So a lot of people have a 6-foot fence and they want to put something in front of the fence to break it up. This wouldn't quite get to the top, so maybe that's, maybe not your best choice. And as a visual barrier without a fence, it's not really tall enough, so we have to look for something else. But in a parking lot island or along a maybe the back of a bed in front of which you have other perennials, this is a great plant. Does anybody want to, and that wheat-like inflorescence lasts all winter long. Next image. And this is the same thing, but with a variegated leaf. It's called avalanche. And there's another one called overdam that's the reverse. Instead of white in the center with green on the outsides, it's white on the outsides with green in the center. That's called overdam. So here you can see what the flower of a calamagrostis looks like as it's developing in late May or June. And then by late June, it looks like wheat. And that wheat lasts until you cut it down the following spring. And then, next image. And this is a calamagrostis in a different species. The first one we saw was Arundinacea, and this is called Brachytricha. Oh, wait, no, that Arundinacea should not be up there. This is Calamagrostis brachytricha. And that's what it looks like, not in the late spring, early summer like Karl Forster, but that's what this grass looks like in the fall. It develops its flower late. And you can see it's a puffy flower like that. Not a really popular plant for some reason. probably because its cousin Carl Forster kind of steals the show. So people don't know about this one, but once it's established in the landscape, this is a fantastic plant, really underused. And if anybody wants to go somewhere where you can spend hours looking at ornamental grasses, not too far away, Lansing is loaded with them. There was a Hort professor there, Art Cameron, who's sort of like the father of grasses in Michigan, sort of, that planted them all over the campus, even before they were popular in the rest of the state, maybe 20, 25 years ago. Next image. And that's what it looks like. Oh, in fact, I took that at Michigan State about 20 years ago. And yeah, that is the wrong name, Arundinacea. It's Brachytricha. So that's what it looked like in September when I took this picture at Michigan State a long, long time ago. Next image. And this is Carex. This is the first ornamental grass that I'm going to show you that is shade tolerant. And it's the first ornamental grass that I'm showing you that is evergreen. So that foliage will look like that 12 months out of the year. It's just a little thing. It's just a tiny little thing that grows about the size of a basketball in the landscape. Oh yeah, we do have one here. Thank you. So a lot of people will come in and they'll ask for an ornamental grass for the shade that they can use as a visual barrier. It's, they want something big that's an ornamental grass in the shade. It just doesn't exist. So I show them this, and they're like, well, that's not going to block the neighbor's pool, right? but you can plant these in mass, and here, show the next image. I took this picture. I think I took this picture in the 90s at the late Kurt Blumel's house in Maryland. Kurt Blumel studied under Carl Forster in Germany. So the ornamental grasses started in Germany 50, 60 years ago or whatever because of Carl Forster, and then one of his students, Kurt Blumel, came to the United States and started promoting ornamental grasses here about 40 years ago, and his nursery, I think, is gone now, but for about 20 or 30 years, he was like the United States version of Carl Forster, and that was in the backyard of his home. I was there for the Perennial Plant Association meeting a long, long time ago. And so that's the plant right there, pictured with a maidenhair grass and, of course, a Japanese painted fern. And in the wintertime, the ferns would be gone, but the Carex Evergold there would still persist. Next image. And this is a newer version of Carex that is this bright gold. Also evergreen, probably a little bit more likely to be damaged from the winter in an unprotected site, but still shade, still evergreen, and still compact. And because this is so gorgeous, and this would apply to the other Carex as well, in the fall, when we're selling components for container combinations, this is something that we would like to offer you because it's a nice little fluffy filler amongst your pansies and your mums and your asters, and maybe in your container you're using gourds, as a little blast of orange, and you put that up against that gold, and you've got a really nice combination. And this is a somewhat taller, more upright version of Carex, but still not that tall, so don't get too excited. It's only about 15, 18 inches, called Ice Dance. And there's several others that are very slight variations of the three that I just showed you, but the three that I just showed you are by far the most popular. Oh, wait, nah, I should throw this. I didn't throw this in there, but there are native Carex too, but they're not as pretty as these. But if you're a native person and you don't mind something that's not quite as attractive because you want to stay native, there is a Pennsylvania sedge that looks just like that, but with thinner leaves and green, and all green, no variegation, if you're into that. We don't sell a lot of that, only by request. Somebody asks for it, we'll get it for them. Next image. That's a horrible picture, but the next one's a little bit better. Oh, there we go. That's a close-up of the inflorescence of Chasmanthium. This grass has a plus and a pretty big minus. The plus is that it is somewhat shade tolerant. It has a gorgeous flower that develops in the summer, not the fall, and so that's the other plus. But the big minus is that this one, unlike almost every other grass we're going to talk about, can drop seeds. And you'll have little babies coming up here and there. Now, I had one of these in my landscape for about 20 years, and it rarely seeded. But I know at least one person that said, I don't want that thing anywhere near my gardens because it's popping up all over the place. And I would argue, if you're one of those people that as soon as a weed starts to show its head, you grab it and pull it out, then this would be okay for you. But if you're one of those people that maybe lets things go for a while, and you let this get hold in 10 or 15 different places in your garden, then you've got a problem. The inflorescence, which is on the next image, blows it. This is one of the prettiest inflorescences you can have on an ornamental grass. It blows in the wind, and it makes a sound, which a lot of the other grasses don't really do that. So it makes this nice rustling sound. So you gotta love it or hate it. Does anybody here hate it? Oh, you love it. Is there a but? Oh, okay. By seed, because the clump itself. Yeah, all of these grasses have, I should have mentioned this early on, have a crown. When you buy it, it has a, like this is an annual grass. We haven't talked about it yet, but it's easy for me to pick up. So the crown of this plant, it's in a 4-inch pot, is about 2 inches wide, right? If this was a perennial grass, like all the ones we've talked about, the crown will expand to 3 or 4 inches the next year, and the next year it'll expand to 4 or 5 inches, and the next year it'll extend. But that expansion of the crown is infinite. So when you plant any of these grasses in the landscape, they will continue to grow. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, you know, I don't really care what it looks like in 20 years. But in 30 or 40 years, if it's not kept in check, then it's going under the fence into the neighbor's yard. And you know, we're talking about an inch of growth a year, but 40 inches over 40 years, maybe that did cross into the neighbor's yard, or it grew up to the sidewalk, or it's up against your house. So ideally, a lot of these, and you know what your threshold of tolerance is and how close you're getting to the next plant or the next house or the next piece of concrete or whatever, it's time to dig it up and divide it, which is not as easy as it sounds. You've got to go into it well caffeinated with a lot of energy, because the crown is somewhat woody, like that of a tree. So you're going to have to use an axe or a really strong serrated blade. But the best thing is you get a DeWalt cordless reciprocating saw. And maybe some of you might know what that is. Maybe you do. It's like the turkey knife from heaven. And that's what you could use to divide the crown like a pizza, dig it up, and share it with friends or enemies. Next image.
It says 2 to 4 feet tall.
Oh, yeah, I'd say 3 feet on average. That's an excellent question. I should have mentioned that. Okay, I had to put this in here. We sell this grass, and it just looks like a little green weed, and you guys are all getting really excited about it, right? This is the picture that is online. And somebody posted it maybe 5-6 years ago, and since then, we've had hundreds of phone calls and hundreds of people walk into the store to get this. And when they look at it, they're like, that doesn't look anything like the picture. I'm like, yeah, I know. Somebody took that picture at just the right moment when the flowers were at their pinkest, because they're only pink like that for a week or so, and then they go to tan, and then it kind of looks a little weedy. And we didn't talk about this either. Some of these grasses are really tidy and upright or form a really nice ball, and others look a little bit too much like what's on the side of the road. And this grass, I think, is a little on the side of the road-ish looking, but that inflorescence there is what has made this popular. So there you have it, Aerograss spectabilis. Arianthus ravena. How many of you guys have seen the really tall pampas grass on the side of the highway when you're driving to Florida? That's called cordillera. We can't grow that here. It's not hardy in Michigan. That's the true pampas grass. This, Arianthus ravena, is the hardy pampas grass. You can grow this in Michigan. Yes? You know, I noticed my handout was missing the whole last page. You know what? I can. whoever emailed me, I can. Yeah, I'll email that to whoever emailed me. Was that you? Did you emailed me? Okay. Yeah, yeah. If it's something that interests you, you could take a picture of the slide. So this is our version of hardy pampas grass, and it's not pink. So everybody looks at this picture of a beautiful hardy or southern pampas grass with a beautiful pink flower, and everybody wants that in their landscape here. And so I have to explain to them on the phone, you can't grow that here. Well, first I ask them, do you live in Michigan? Because I'm a little bit of a smartass. So that's the first thing I'll say. And they say, yeah, I live in Michigan. I said, well, you can't grow that here. Now, if you live in Georgia or Louisiana, we're all set. But if you want the one that you can grow in Michigan, this is what we have. And this is the way it works. It's got a blue-green leaf. I didn't bring it because ours are blooming, and they're about 8 or 9 feet tall, and it didn't fit into the van. It's got blue-green foliage. It comes up, as you can see, early in the season, about 3 to 4 feet tall. And then the next image. And then these stiff stems start to elongate out of the center of the plant in the summer, and then by fall or winter, it looks like that. So the one that grows down south looks a lot like this, but with a bigger flower that's pink or white. This one has a white flower, and in the wintertime, I think the next image can show you, a really established plant will look like that. The more mature the plant is, the more flower stalks it sends up. And so this is at Longwood Gardens in Pennsylvania. So a really established plant will look like that. You can see the foliage stays down low. So for blocking the neighbor's pool, it's not going to cut it until fall because the foliage stays low. And you have to wait for all the flowers to emerge, which is late summer to fall. And then you're going to have a visual barrier, but not from the leaves, from the flowers over time. Yep, next image. This is Festuca, which is popular, but it's got the good news is it's evergreen. It looks like that 12 months out of the year. The bad news is I would buy this as a specimen here or there, knowing that if you were to plant 10, the next year you might only have 8 or 9, and the next year you might only have 7 or 8. This plant is I think, very sensitive to wet winters, and parts of it will start to die out. So there's some people that look at this and are like, oh, I want to plant a row of a tall grass there, and I'm going to put the Festuca, this plant here, right in front in a pretty row. And I got to come in and say, that's not such a good idea because that pretty row in the front isn't going to be a pretty row next year or the year after. So really pretty little evergreen grass, but not super reliable in the long run, especially if you want a mass planting. There's an alternative coming up that we'll talk about, I think. This is my favorite ornamental grass, and it's for shade. How many of you guys have this? Hacknacloa aureola. Oh, that's wonderful. So, yeah, there's one on the corner of the cart here. Its habit is not upright like all the other grasses. It sort of grows up and then cascades down. We call this a waterfall growth habit. The gold one, like what you see up on the screen, is golden green variegated, is aureola. There's another one that's all gold called all gold. And then there's an all green one called just macra. And there's a white and green one too. But this is by far, I shouldn't say by far anymore because all gold is getting very popular. But this is a very popular variety within the genus. And it still provides winter interest. It has this beautiful semi-cascading habit, glows in the shade, very hardy. The one sort of bad thing about it is that it's a little bit on the slow side, which is, could be good, could be bad. If you're in it for the long run, slow is good. And if you want to look like it's 10 years old fast, then you better buy, more than one and clump them together. So in the wintertime, picture that going to tan, which I don't, do I have an image of that? No, I don't. Oh, this was taken on, what's the big lake just north of here? Well, this is in front of one of my customers' homes, and this is in the fall. You can see the asters and a handful of annuals, and look what's glowing in the front of this image. And that's, this grass will take quite a bit of sun, but I wouldn't put it in full sun unless you're willing to tolerate some burning of the leaves later on in the summer. We sold 100 and some of these to the firefighters park a month or so ago in Troy, and they put them in full sun, knowing that late summer they're going to burn a little bit, but they're still going to thrive and be gorgeous the rest of the time. Did I see a hand? That's the common name for Haconocloa macroaureola. It's also called hackone grass. You called it forest grass? Yeah, it's all the same. Yeah. Okay, next image. And this is a horrible picture of the all gold version. The exact same thing, but all gold, no green stripe, pictured with some kind of a bush. This is another grass that a lot of people get excited about because it's very red. A lot of people want the annual fountain grass that's purple all summer, purpley red, and has a pretty flower in the fall. So they'll type in perennial purple grass or red grass, and this comes up, and they're like, oh, I like the way that looks. Well, I had this in the front of my house for a few years, and remember how I said that the crowns of these grasses expand sort of, radially every year. This grass is a little bit more wild when it grows. It will, it doesn't maintain that nice round shape. It looks a little untidy. So that's okay if you're willing to go and sort of reshape it a little bit, or maybe you want to bury something in the ground to keep it in a nice little circle. So that's one thing. It doesn't grow tidy like some of these other grasses. The other thing is that red color is really nice late summer and early fall, but then as time goes on, it looks pretty brown. And I mean, it kind of looks a little like, it's not bad, but it's a little sickly looking, right? So it lost its really intense red color, and now it's going to go to tan. This is actually a tidier clump than I should have brought. I should have brought you one that was less tidy looking than this. So for red, it's one of your better choices, but for tidiness and long term, because of the way it grows, it's I would move it down on the list a little bit. And yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. That is, I think that's genius. And she's a gardener. A lot of people want to use grasses and put them in the ground, walk away and forget about it. But if she's willing to go out there and control it, then that's, God bless her. That's perfect for her. Miscanthus, this is a very big and diverse group of plants. A lot of people will come in and ask me for maiden grass. Well, I've got 15 different kinds. Or they'll come in and they'll ask me for silver grass. I've got 15 different kinds. Those are the same. They all refer to Miscanthus sinensis, and they vary in growth habit, size, leaf color, bloom time, and flower color. And we're going to show you some of my favorites. Not my favorites, some of the best ones. That's what the flower looks like, right? And you drive around, you see this everywhere right now. You can see some over here. Next image. This one stands out, and it's not terribly popular, but this is, I remember how I said they're all different versions of Miscanthus sinensis. This is called Miscanthus giganteus. I took this picture in California at the Perennial Plant Symposium when it was in Sacramento. That was like in July. Can you imagine what that thing looked like if you would have gone back in September or October in California? It grows big. It does create a visual barrier. It will flower very late in the season, but it's just a monster, obviously. Not terribly popular, but for creating, you could not just block the neighbor's pool, you could block the neighbor's house and their camper. So that's the biggest miscanthus on the market. Now, we've only talked about two ultra tall plants. One was the hardy pampas grass or erianthus, and this is the second one, Miscanthus giganteus. So those are the two biggest grasses that you can buy and grow in Michigan. Next image, please. And then this is sort of a goofy order. This is the smallest Miscanthus, and it's called Little Kitten, and it's here somewhere, but it looks just like that. It's V-shaped, grows about 3 feet tall, and that's what the inflorescence looks like. Similar to the others, but a little bit different. Next. This is Adagio, not the greatest picture, but Adagio has a lot of flowers, even when it's young. There is one here somewhere. And the flower looks an awful lot like this, and this might even be it right here. And you can see it's got sort of like an upright habit, but eventually when it's mature, it's mounded, but it makes a lot of flowers that are a little pinkish when they first emerge, and it produces its flowers relatively early for a miscanthus and tops out at 4 to 5 feet tall. And you're like, ooh, 4 to 5 feet tall, that's a really good looking, very floriferous grass. So, and you could use this to break up a fence that's 6 feet tall. But there are others that grow a little bit taller that might do a little bit better job that I'll show you next. This is Cosmopolitan. This is one of 2 popular miscanthus that have variegated foliage. One is Cosmopolitan, the other one is called Cabaret. And they're big at 7 to 8 feet tall. Quite a specimen in the garden, and really tall and V-shaped. And there's just a close-up of the leaf. And then this is Miscanthus Dixieland, which is on my list of favorites, because anywhere you put this in the landscape, as long as it's pretty sunny, it is glowing. That variegation is super, super bright. You can see it from an airplane driving, flying overhead. And there you see it in the fall in front of some ornamental kale and a Chamaecyparis. And it goes to about 4 feet tall. So a glowing, beautiful specimen that you could work into a perennial bed that will be spectacular summer, fall, and then in the winter the whole thing goes to tan and provides you with winter interest. And wait, we didn't talk about this at all, but that kale there will also last like till Christmas. So if you want, I brought an ornamental, kale. These are just starting to color up. As it gets cooler, they'll color up more. These are spectacular. September, October, November, even into December. And then sometime in the spring, if they're still around, after they've frozen a few times, you better get rid of them, because frozen cabbage doesn't smell so good. And this is our young crop of ornamental cabbage. And the nice thing about this, and the ones like Red Boar and Dinosaur and a few others, you don't have to wait for the temperatures to drop for it to develop its coloration. It has really pretty foliage color, back in August. But full sun and lower temperatures will turn this like a gorgeous purple. That just came out of a greenhouse yesterday where it wasn't getting quite as much sun as it should be. And then here's another shot of the variegated miscanthus. You see how bright it is there up against a daisy. Wait, will you back that one up, please? Yeah. That's a regular Shasta daisy. Forget it. I've got a different daisy I wanted to show you. And there, look at how in this image, this is a perennial plant symposium a long, long time ago. There's really nothing all that pretty in this picture, right? But look what's glowing amongst the other plants, a variegated miscanthus. Okay, next. And there are a couple different varieties. They vary in heights somewhat. And this is one example of a gold-banded miscanthus. You can see one right here on the cart. Really nice, bright gold banding. And then above that, a really pretty coppery inflorescence on a plant. In the case of gold breeze, it's 5 to 6 feet, but there's others that are even smaller and a few that are even taller. A lot of you think you want zebra grass, which looks like this, but you don't. Zebra grass is the one that grows up and then flops open. That's called Miscanthus sinensis zebrinus. What you really want is Miscanthus sinensis strictus, or porcupine grass, that grows upright and stiff like this. That's your big, banded miscanthus. So people come in and they say, I want zebra grass. I'm like, no, you don't. You want porcupine grass, and here it is, because zebra grass splits open. Okay, next. This is Gracilis. Really, really horrible picture, but there's one over here somewhere. It's a really dense green ball whose flowers develop late, about 5 to 6 feet tall. It's very tidy, very, modern looking. Maybe I'll pull one out in a little bit because it's kind of congested over there. Next. And here's see how tidy the clump is on the left, and that's what the inflorescence looks like when it develops later on in the season. Oops. And this is my favorite miscanthus. And the reason being Oh, it's all right there. It grows 6 to 7 feet tall, which if you have a 6-foot wooden fence and you want something to break it up, you need a grass that grows about 6 feet tall. Well, this one does. Extremely early to bloom. Other miscanthus might not flower till November. Most of them are September, October. But this one, there's a picture you're going to see that I took in July, and it already had flowers on it, but that was taken in Boston. But you'll see that in just a moment. This picture was taken in August. And look at how coppery the inflorescence is. There is one of these. It's like the prettiest flower here. I think it's in the back here. That's sort of coppery, like what you see there. And the copper goes to tan, but it's very coppery for several weeks. And then the fourth bullet down, leaves protrude from the stems at a unique angle, providing a bamboo-like effect. A lot of the miscanthus, it's an acute angle between the main stem and the secondary leaves that are coming off. This one, the stems come off the leaves come off the stem at more of a 90-degree angle. So it's a little bit more of a bamboo-y look, and then it's got a beautiful, tidy, V-shaped growth habit. Does anybody have any questions about this? It's pretty, right? Malapardus, yes.
I've seen on a couple slides that you've mentioned a V-shaped.
Growth habit, yes. Oh. It grows like this. V-shaped.
From outside.
Like, from the ground, it comes up like this, V-shaped. Yep. And you can see, there's a lot of these grasses when they're young, they're V-shaped. And then as they mature, they develop more of a ball shape, but that stays V-shaped. That picture was taken, this is kind of crazy. This is in Boston. It's a hair warmer there, and it was either the 3rd or the 4th of July. So that's freakishly early for a miscanthus to be developing an inflorescence. For us, it's usually late July, not early July. But that's Malapardus. That's the first time I ever saw one. It was in 1999. You always remember when you saw your first, Panicum heavy metal, or your first miscanthus Malapardus, right? Maybe not. Okay, and this is Morning Light, very popular because it's tidy and it's not a variegated leaf, but it does have a bright white midrib that gives it a variegated look. I think there's one over there, but it's tidy and neat. Not a hint of weediness to that plant either. This is Ophiopogon Planiscapus nigrescens. This is a tiny, tiny little thing. The good news is that it's evergreen. The bad news is that it grows really slow, and it's only 6 inches tall. Some people really like this contrasted with something else, because that almost disappears in the landscape. So you've got to contrast it with this with something gold, something green, something silver. There. And that's gorgeous, right? You got a this was taken somewhere warmer than here, because we can't grow a columnar yew like that. I think I took this in Washington or Oregon so long ago. But look at how the grass contrasts with, or complements, I should say, the pavers around it, and contrasts with the dark green upright yew. Next. So the bad thing about that one is that it's very, very slow. And keep in mind, if it's evergreen, that means you never cut it back, right? You don't need to cut it back. It looks the same 12 months out of the year. And then panicum. I want to tell you something about panicum. I'm a really big fan of panicum, and maybe in a year or two, you're all going to be even bigger fans than I am. Panicum is a native that's tolerant of our heavier soils. If you want a workhorse that's ultra hardy, ultra tolerant of a broad range of grasses, great winter interest, beautiful seed pods, great summer color, beautiful fall color, in some cases more than others, this is a great grass. So it's really hard to not consider this when you're thinking about grasses, especially if you're like, you know what? My husband's not going to dig a big, beautiful hole to plant this in, so I'm just going to make a divot in the clay and cross my fingers. This is the grass for you. And also, you know how a lot of people want to put a grass in a container? Well, or here, better yet. People come here like, oh, I'm sick of planting the containers in front of my house. I just want to fill it with perennials so I don't have to ever touch it again. Okay, so how many perennials are going to overwinter in a container, year after year after year above the ground? Not very many, but I would argue that you could throw a daylily in there. That'd be pretty boring. And maybe you could throw a hosta in there. That'd be pretty boring too. So there's only a handful of plants that I don't even recommend it, that I would suggest for somebody who's desperately trying to put a perennial in a container and expect it to overwinter. This, because it's so hardy and tolerant of a broad range of soils and stuff like that, this is like a zone 4 plant. If anybody wanted to put a grass in the middle of a container and hope that it overwinters, I would go to a panicum. They start around 3 feet tall and go up to around 7 feet tall. So we're going to start here with heavy metal. This is, see, I'll never forget. I think I was at Longwood Gardens, and I was on a bus full of people, and the driver didn't care, but the person who was talking to the driver said, and look, there's panicum heavy metal. So the bus stopped, and we all ran out, and we were that was the first year I ever saw. But look at why. I mean, it's a stiff, blue, upright, tidy mound of foliage. Oh, and I forgot to tell you this. With these beautiful, airy flowers right about now, the last to fall. So this is my wife, Jan. And a couple weeks ago, we visited a breeder on the other side of the state who is developing panicum. I asked him if he would share an image of the panicum that we saw there that won't be available for another 2 or 3 years, and he would not give it to me because he said it's a legal thing. It's a long story. But we saw a panicum that was so purpley blue that the foliage itself it looked like it was photoshopped. And do you remember what color the flowers were? I think the buds were like pink. So purpley blue and pink. And when we drove by and saw some other ones where the foliage was blue with like white on top, like snow on top, because the buds were all white. So in the next few years, you're going to see panicums that will blow your. I was going through this and thinking everyone's going to want one of those grasses in their life somewhere. In the front of the house, the back of the house, at the cottage, somewhere. They're going to want to look at that grass. And it was in early September when panicums are sort of at their peak. So when it comes to panicums, we have a lot to look forward to. He's also breeding big blue stems and little blue stems, which are nice, but they're not quite as groundbreakingly different as what we saw him doing with panicums. So until then, this is what we have. This is Shenandoah's their heavy metal is your 4-footer. Shenandoah is your 3-footer. That's what it looks like when it's emerging in the spring. And you can see it has some red in it, right? Blue-green with some red, or purpley red. So Shenandoah is a 3-footer. I had one of those in front of my house for several years, like where the sidewalk, where the walkway to the front door meets the sidewalk. I had one on either end, so that if you're walking on the sidewalk, you go between the panicum Shenandoah and you walk up to the front door. And I just so you know, I used a snowblower to get the snow off of the sidewalk, and I flattened both of them with all the snow. They were just flat as could be, and I was like, what's going to happen here? Well, about a month or two, whatever later, the snow melted, and whoop, they were right back up. So just keep that in mind. I don't know if other grasses do that, but the Shenandoah was perfectly, the panicum in general, not just Shenandoah, is that way. Okay, the next image, Shenandoah en masse. And then this is kind of cool. This is a little harder to find. There's one called Hot Rod, another one called Blood Brothers, and these have that really nice, intense purpley red color, not just in the fall when you're sort of expecting grasses to change, but rather in the summer as well. So I think that's a beautiful little specimen. And this is actually a little bit more like the foliage that we saw maybe, but it was like shades of like rose and purple. Get me back here in a couple, 3 years, and I'll show you what he did. This is Northwind, which has become very popular for us lately for people that are trying to break up a fence, because this is it's not really 6 feet tall, it's more like 5 feet tall. And it's very stiff, clean, upright, tidy, gorgeous. Gorgeous. There's one over there, but it's kind of hard when I'm holding this for me to grab it. But we also have something a little bit taller if you want a slightly taller, really stiff, upright version of a panicum that I may or may not have an image of. Next. Oh, lightning bolt. We were at an open house on the other side of the state a week ago, and there was a row of these in the breeder's display garden that was about 6 to 7 feet tall. And this is called lightning bolt. It's just a column of blue-green foliage with that type of inflorescence in the summer that opens up into all those that airy mass of flowers late summer. Really good for breaking up a fence or creating a barrier. You know, everybody plants arborvitae to create a visual barrier. We did it in our backyard, but you could make a heck of a visual barrier to the yard behind you or the pool or the RV or whatever it is with ornamental grasses. Understanding that there's a couple months out of the year when there's nothing there, right? Because you're going to cut it back in the spring, and then now you're looking at the neighbor's house for about 2 months until the foliage shoots up again and starts to create a visual barrier, and then by maybe after 3 months, you've got your barrier back. Next. Pennisetum. This is another, are there 2 N's in pennisetum? Did I do that right? Okay, good. Pennisetum is fountain grass, and this is a group of plants that is really, there's a lot of new varieties out there. So if you were to bring in a picture of a pennisetum, I might not be able to tell you what variety it is because they're coming out with a lot of them. They're all about 1.5 feet to 2 feet, up to about 4 to 5 feet. So let's see which ones are up here on the screen. Fuzzy Wuzzy is that's the smallest one. So if you want a really small fountain grass, that one's, it says 1.5 feet, but when it's really established in the garden, it'll be up to 2 feet. But if you want one smaller than this, or you tell me you want Little Bunny has fallen off the face of the earth. We can't get it anymore for whatever reason, so we have to use Fuzzy Wuzzy. And there's another one that's really compact that we don't sell anymore either. This is the smallest one, and it's beautiful, right? Oh, one word about pennisetum. That flower does start, not the whole plant, but the flower itself does start to shatter in the winter. So all those tiny, tiny little florets on that raceme of flowers will fall off eventually through the winter. Just every week, a few more fall, and the next week, a few more fall. And by spring, it's just like a little stick with hardly any florets left on it. This is a Carly Rose, which is very distinct from the other pennisetum in that the inflorescence has a really strong pink hue to it, and it's a very billowy plant. It moves in the wind. So for that reason, this is a wonderful grass. However, it's a very tough grass. I mean, I've seen it under mailboxes, side of the road, in front of the mall, all over the place. But I would argue that if you don't have really good soil, or if you wait too late to plant it in the season, this one could give you some trouble. But if you give it plenty of time to establish, decent soil, everything's going to be okay. Gorgeous. And this is redhead, which is not so much red, but more of like a burgundy black inflorescence that's big on a relatively large pennisetum at about 4 feet tall. And I've seen this really happy in display gardens, not so much in people's homes, up to 5 feet tall. And it's spectacular. Next. Ginger Love, this isn't that exciting, a 3-footer that grows into a ball. And Hamlin was the dwarf fountain grass for decades until Fuzzy Wuzzy came along. Now Fuzzy Wuzzy is even more dwarf, right? But Hamlin that's everywhere. Anywhere you go, if you see like a common, I just saw this at the store next door or at the house next door, it's that one because that was the best-selling pennisetum for decades. Let's see what's next. Burgundy. Oh, don't show them that. Next. that one. That's one that we don't offer anymore. I don't even know if it's available. This is the only image of, and this is important. You know, like 20 years ago, maybe it's 25 years ago now. Yeah, I'd say about 25 years ago, people are like, George is talking about grasses. I'm going to go try one. So they go into Home Depot or Lowe's and they buy that. That's ribbon grass. And then they take it home, and then a few minutes later, it's taken over the yard, and they're thinking to themselves, that George does not know what he's talking about. I am not ever going to touch an ornamental grass again. And so 20, 25 years ago, this is why I put this slide in here. This grass gave ornamental grasses a very bad rap. And so for years, people are like, oh, no, I'm not going to think about a grass. My neighbor's got one. I saw what happened to her. You know, she had to move, and then. So this is phalaris. Oh, yeah, there it is. Phalaris, or ribbon grass. And I think there was another one, I can't even remember what it's called, that was also evil, that gave grass a bad rap. And we don't sell this. You don't want it. I just wanted you to know that this is an exception. This is not how ornamental grasses that we sell in today's day and age grow. Next. This is schizachyrium. None of you have this on your handouts, right? Oh. So this is little blue stem, and the breeder we visited is also doing a lot with these, but there's nothing all that mind-blowing. This is the native that I said really wants to be in well-drained soil. You have clay soil, you could struggle with this. Okay, maybe hungry soils, but not heavy soils. Like hungry is okay, but well-drained. Back when, yeah, I'm all for natives, but when people were like, oh no, I gotta have a native grass for over here, if they didn't do a good job, this is before people kind of knew how this grass worked. They're like, oh yeah, I'll take some little blue stem, and they plant a whole bunch of them, and then the next year they look like they're not getting better looking, they're getting worse looking. Like the plants are getting smaller and they're not holding up well. It's because of the heavier soil. So in well-drained soil, it's a beautiful blue, blue, blue leaf whose top turns red. There's some over there, but I can't get to them right now. Provides winter interest, deer resistant, native. So all of that is wonderful. Next. This is Papadellis, which it's just a little mounding grass about 1.5 feet tall. And you're like, oh, I don't really need anything like that. Well, I'll tell you why you might need this one. And this is shown without its inflorescence, and I think the next image is the same way. It has okay, yeah, back it up. It has a tiny, tiny little wheat-like flower that develops late summer and fall. Does anybody know this grass? It smells like. Does anybody know what it smells like? I think it smells like baked bread. And so when I'm walking by this at the garden center or anywhere else, I know that smell, and I know this grass is close by. So if anybody wants like a cute little something that they can smell when it's in bloom, like by your back patio or by your front door, I think this might be a really good choice for you. We took our kid to a soccer tournament in Indianapolis last fall, and I had to park the car like, 1/4 mile away. And I parked the car, got out, and I was like, I can smell it. It's here somewhere. And about 40, 50 feet away on the edge of the parking lot was a giant mass of it. So just for its fragrance, and of course I brought one with no flowers on it. Isn't that great?
We have it throughout our rain garden in Aldo.
Oh, that's good. Now, the flowers are only there like, a month and a half, let's say. So this is like the other 10.5 months, wear some perfume or something. But for a month and a half, that is a wonderful fragrance. Evergreen, tidy, nice in masses, but not, it's not going to block the neighbor's pool, and it's not going to make a really strong statement as a single specimen other than the fragrance. And then the last image is just a pretty garden that's got some different grasses all over the place, and that might be it, right, Jan? That's not the greatest slide. I forgot these were in here. What's after this? Is that it? Okay, good. Then I'm going to, I want to show you some of the grasses on the table, but I have to do it without this. Everyone's okay with that, right? Oh, and I brought a few annual grasses. Panacetum.
I'm just gonna hold this just so that on the broadcast, people can hear you.
Oh, okay. So there's another Panacetum that's gotten really popular the last few years, like Vertigo, which is Proven Winner's version. And it's got a cattail-like flower above a broader purple leaf. It's in there somewhere. So I think I'll eventually find it. And then this is another grass we didn't talk about that is called Juncus. And this is called Blue Dart. This looks like this 12 months out of the year. It never changes. And you don't see any flower on this right now, but this does produce a flower in the spring, which is kind of, no. Oh, everybody should come and smell this. This is Simicifuga or Actea. It's just a nice companion plant to some of these grasses, because when a lot of the grasses are really shining, October and November.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's not it.
Darn it.
I mean, I might have forgot it, but it was in a little pot somewhere. So late in the season, when grasses are really looking good, you could just have a whole bunch of gorgeous grasses with nothing else, or you could put in Simicifuga or asters, in shades of pink or blue. Those are on sale. Anybody know what this is? It looks like a Shasta, but Shastas bloom June, July, right? Maybe a flower here and there. This is a Montauk daisy.
Okay.
This usually doesn't start blooming until the end of October. So all your mums will be done blooming, your asters will be done blooming, everything will be done blooming other than your grasses. And they can't hear me?
I was.
Oh, she's got it. Because I have to grab more plants. So this is the only one I had with a flower on it. All the rest were in bud, and some had tight buds. So this is like a daisy, but it grows big, like 3-4 feet wide. It's covered with these daisy-like flowers, and it starts later on in October and goes into early November. Kind of crazy, right? Montauk daisy, or Nippon daisy, or sometimes called Chrysanthemum niponica.
You can put stuff on the table, it's not a problem.
Can you cut those down?
Can you cut down the Nippon daisies in the fall? Yes. Yeah, when they're done.
Because otherwise they.
No. I mean, almost all of your perennials should be cut down late in the season when they're no longer providing you with winter interest.
What about the horsetail one?
Horsetail? Oh, I did, yeah.
Mine have been.
This is just another example of. I should know this. I bought this from Florida months ago because a customer wanted this kind of an ornamental grass for their container, and it looked horrible. So it took me, 3 months to make it look decent like that. But this isn't a good version of an annual grass, and this is called, it's a rush. Something Equisetum or horsetail rush. Equisetum. You can put this on the edge of a pond. That's kind of cool looking, right? Really formal for the center of the container. Even this time of year, you could put this in the middle of a pot with your mums and your asters and your pansies and things like that. Your ornamental cabin and your kale and your gourd. Pansies, of course, are beautiful this time of year, right? Anybody know what this is? Yes, Kaluna. These are really pretty this time of year, right? We've got this pinkish color and then a purpley color. Just a nice little accent for the side of the container. This is a perennial, but it needs protection. It has to be in a protected site, acidic and full sun. Acidic, well protected, and full sun. This is exclamation point, which is one of the little blue stem that I showed you. This is going to grow taller, but you can see how blue-green the foliage is on this. And then some grasses were cut back so you can't even see the flowers. This is a panicum called Smoky Rose that has a purpley inflorescence. The ones we showed you were more like tan or cream. This will eventually develop. It's just starting right now, but this one was cut back, so it's it's not growing like the way it really wants to in the landscape. So it's gonna, in other words, a year from now, this will be 4 feet tall and it'll already have the purple flowers on it. I don't think I'm gonna dig through all these, but look at how, who does the Odoff Garden? Or is Red October, do you have Red October in there?
I have a list right here.
Okay, that's okay. So this is Andropogon, or Big Blue Stem, Red October, and I can't remember which one there's hundreds of in that garden, but it might be this one. And see how purpley the foliage is? And this was also cut back, so it doesn't have any flowers on it. That just happens in the production environment this time of year. And the rest of these you can come up and take a look at, I guess, instead of me digging through. All right, does anybody have any questions about anything we talked about or we didn't talk about? Yes. They are all deer resistant, except for this one. Yeah, this is the juncus. The juncus is not deer resistant, but everything else we talked about, deer resistant. Isn't that wonderful? But you can't have a whole garden full of grasses, but boy, you could have a lot of grasses in a garden. The house I've lived in the longest, there was at least one ornamental grass in every bed, and there were a lot of beds, and they all had a purpose, either to create a visual barrier, to soften a corner, just to break up a big long bed of short things. So they're so diverse. Yeah, and I saw another hand. Yes.
You talked about everything above the ground. What about the root systems on these grasses? Do they grow deep or spread out?
No, they spread out. It's your typical sideways growing fibrous root system. I know I talked a little bit about how dense the crown becomes. About 25 years ago, we were doing a class on dividing your perennials in the fall. And I went for a run that morning, got home, grabbed the shovel, and I had a Calamagrostis Carl Forster, the one with the wheat-like inflorescence in the front of the yard, with a crown on it about 2 feet wide. And I was kind of rushing, because my talk was like at 10, and I still had to shower and stuff like that. And I thought, I'm gonna dig up this grass, take it into the store, and then I'll demonstrate in front of everybody how to do it. Well, I jumped on the shovel. I heard this really loud crack in my ankle, and that was it. I called the store. They came and got me. They came and they dug up the grass. And I did the talk from a desk chair and went to the hospital afterwards. So the crown of an ornamental grass, when I say it becomes woody like the trunk of a tree, has anybody here tried to divide an ornamental grass? You see, and they remember, and they might not do it again. So it is a really dense crown. That's why I say you got to go into it with the right attitude, and definitely the right tools. Or the right helper. Yes?
What I kind of noticed with the Carl Forster that I have, does it like die from the center?
Yes. Some ornamental grasses, as that crown expands, will create a hole in the center where it's died out. But usually, and you can sort of deter this with maybe more frequent division. Usually, that center will eventually become a happy place for that grass to spread back into. Instead of just growing out, it'll start to grow back into the center. So, and some grasses do this more than others. No, that's okay. Yep, yeah. Some of them stay thick and dense, and you couldn't like drop a penny into the middle of them. And others will be a little bit more irregular like that and die out a little bit in the center. Mm-hmm. But then I've seen where it grows back in like a year or two later, when whatever was there from the year before or the year before kind of dies out. Now it's just regular soil, like what's around the grass, and it'll grow back in. Yes?
Is it good to plant now or better to wait till spring?
I would say the sooner you get them in the ground, the better, period. But that applies to all perennials, right? I wouldn't wait till November. And there's two other parts to that answer. One, now is when all the ornamental grasses look great. We've been selling them since April, right? When they look like this. But now is when people are walking through the neighborhood or driving by and they're like, wow, what is that? And then they'll snap a picture, or they come into the store, I'm like, I want to see your ornamental grasses because everybody's got them, and I've got this spot where I think I could use one. So this is the best time to see what a mature specimen looks like to help you make your decision. And then most of the grasses we talk to are so hardy that you could plant them for the next 2, 3, 4 weeks without any issues. And then a couple I mentioned are a little on the delicate side, like the Pennisetum Carly Rose and the little Festuca, the little blue ones. The stuff that's a little on the tender side, maybe you wait till spring. Or you roll the dice, because a lot of them are on sale now too. All of our perennials are 20% off, which we don't usually do that, but it was just easier in the computer to do it for me. So yeah, they're all 20% off the everyday low price, which is like, close to half of what you're used to buying them from at like English Gardens or whatever. Yes? We have, I'd say maybe a third of them there's 10 or more of, but we're pretty fast at getting what people want. So I think I've been to the other side of the state twice in the last 7 days, and both times I was getting grasses. So whatever we don't have, we will get. Or I'll pick up the phone and get them delivered. But if somebody's like, I got a landscaper coming Tuesday, and I'm like, my truck isn't showing up till Thursday. She's like, oh, I really got to have them by Tuesday. I'll run to the other side of the state and pick some up. We got a lake house over here, so it's a good excuse to get to the lake house. Yeah. Think we covered it all? Yes. A purple top grass? Purple pop? P-O-P? T-O-P, that's what I thought you said. Nope. I would love to Google that, because I know my grasses really well, and who did that? Purple top. I have no idea what that is. It's a Telly's greenhouse, and it's on the one side of your handout that did print properly. So we have a store in Troy, and we have a store in Shelby Township. I would argue that the grass selection in Troy is much better than the selection in Shelby Township. My son runs the Shelby store, and it's a slower store, so he doesn't stock grasses as well as I do. So, any other questions? If anybody wants to come up and take a look at what we have here, I brought a few other companion plants or things that you might want to think about working into your containers or your beds this time of year, and I think that's about it. Okay? You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.